pictures, muttering underground in one world, to be realized perhaps in some other. Upon the secret mirror of our dream such a trial is darkly projected, at intervals, perhaps, to every one of us. That dream, so familiar to childhood, of meeting a lion, and, from languishing prostration in hope and vital energy, the constant sequel of lying down before him, publishes the secret frailty of the human nature, reveals its deep-seated pariah, falsehood, to itself, records its abysmal treachery. Perhaps not one of us escapes that dream. Perhaps, as by some sorrowful doom of man, that dream repeats for every one of us, through every generation, the original temptation in Eden. Every one of us in this dream has a bait offered to the infirm places of his own individual will. Once again a snare is made ready for leading him into captivity to a luxury of ruin. Again, as in aboriginal paradise, the man falls from innocence. Once again, by infinite iteration, the ancient earth groans to God, through her secret caves, over the weakness of her child. Nature, from her seat, sighing through all her works, again gives signs of woe that all is lost. And again the counter-sigh is repeated to the sorrowing heavens of the endless rebellion against God. Many people think that one man, the patriarch of our race, could not in his single person execute this rebellion for all his race. Perhaps they are wrong. But even if not, perhaps in the world of dreams every one of us ratifies for himself the original act. Our English rite of confirmation, by which, in years of awakened reason, we take upon us the engagements contracted for us in our slumbering infancy. How sublime a rite is that! The little postern gate, through which the baby in its cradle has been silently placed for a time within the glory of God's countenance, suddenly rises to the clouds as a triumphal arch, through which, with banners displayed and martial pomps, we make our second entry, as crusading soldiers militant for God, by personal choice and by sacramental oath. Each man says in effect, "Lo, I rebaptize myself, and that which once was sworn on my behalf now I swear for myself." Even so in dreams, perhaps under some secret conflict of the midnight sleeper, lighted up to the consciousness at the time, but darkened to the memory as soon as all is finished, each several child of our mysterious race completes for himself the aboriginal fall. As I drew near the Manchester post office, I found that it was considerably past midnight, but to my great relief, as it was important for me to be in Westmoreland by the morning, I saw by the huge saucer eyes of the mail blazing through the gloom of overhanging houses that my chance was not yet lost, past the time it was, but by some luck, very unusual in my experience, the mail was not even yet ready to start. I ascended to my seat on the box, where my cloak was still lying as it had lain at the Bridgewater Arms. I had left it there in imitation of a nautical discoverer, who leaves a bit of bunting on the shores of his discovery, by way of warning off the ground the whole human race, and signalizing to the Christian and the heathen worlds, with his best compliments, that he has planted his throne forever upon that virgin soil, henceforward claiming the jus domini to the top of the atmosphere above it, and also the right of driving shafts to the centre of the earth below it, so that all people found after this warning, either aloft in the atmosphere, or in the shafts, or squatting on the soil, will be treated as trespassers, that is, decapitated by their very faithful and obedient servant, the owner of said bunting. Possibly my cloak might not have been respected, and the jus gentium might have been cruelly violated in my person, for, in the dark, people commit deeds of darkness, gas being a great ally of morality. But it so happened that, on this night, there was no other outside passenger, and the crime, which else was but too probable, missed fire for want of a criminal. By the way, I may as well mention at this point, since a circumstantial accuracy is essential to the effect of my narrative, that there was no other person of any description whatever about the mail, the guard, the coachman, and myself being allowed for, except only one, a horrid creature of the class known to the world as insiders, but whom young Oxford called sometimes Trojans, in opposition to our Grecian selves, and sometimes vermin. A Turkish effendi who piques himself on good breeding will never mention by name a pig. Yet it is but too often that he has reason to mention this animal, since constantly in the streets of Stamboul he has his trousers deranged or polluted by this vile creature running between his legs. But under any excessive hurry he is always careful, out of respect to the company he is dining with, to suppress the odious name, and to call the wretch that other creature, as though all animal life beside formed one group, and this odious beast, to whom, as Chrysippus observed, salt serves as an apology for a soul, formed another and alien group on the outside of creation. Now I, who am an English effendi, that think myself to understand good breeding as well as any son of Ottoman, beg my reader's pardon for having mentioned an insider by his gross natural name. I shall do no more, and if I should have occasion to glance at so painful a subject, I shall always call him that other creature. Let us hope, however, that no such distressing occasion will arise. But by the way, an occasion arises at this moment, for the reader will be sure to ask, when we come to the story, was this other creature present? He was not, or more correctly, perhaps, it was not. We dropped the creature, or the creature by natural imbecility dropped itself, within the first 10 miles from Manchester. In the latter case, I wish to make a philosophical remark of a moral tendency. When I die, or when the reader dies, and by repute suppose a fever, it will never be known whether we died in reality of the fever or of the doctor. But this other creature, in the case of dropping out of the coach, will enjoy a coroner's inquest. Consequently, he will enjoy an epitaph. For I insist upon it, that the verdict of a coroner's jury makes the best of epitaphs. It is brief, so that the public all find time to read. It is pithy, so that the surviving friends, if any can survive such a loss, remember it without fatigue. It is upon oath, so that rascals and Dr. Johnsons cannot pick holes in it. Died through the visitation of intense stupidity, by impinging on a moonlight night against the off hind wheel of the Glasgow mail. Deodand upon the said wheel 2d. What a simple lapidary inscription! Nobody much in the wrong, but an off wheel, and with few acquaintances, and if it were rendered into choice Latin, though there would be a little bother in finding a Ciceroian word for off wheel, Marcellus himself, that great master of sepulchral eloquence, could not show a better. Why I call this little remark moral is, from the compensation it points out. Here, by the supposition, is that other creature on the one side, the beast of the world, and he or it gets an epitaph. You and I, on the contrary, the pride of our friends, get none. But why linger on the subject of vermin? Having mounted the box, I took a small quantity of laudanum, having already travelled 250 miles, namely from a point 70 miles beyond London, upon a simple breakfast. In the taking of laudanum, there was nothing extraordinary, but by accident it drew upon me the special attention of my assessor on the box, the coachman, and in that there was nothing extraordinary, but by accident, and with great delight, it drew my attention to the fact that this coachman was a monster in point of size, and that he had but one eye. In fact, he had been foretold by Virgil as monstrum horrendum informe inges cui lumen adempium. He answered in every point. A monster he was, dreadful, shapeless, huge, who had lost an eye. But why should that delight me? Had he been one of the calendars in the Arabian Nights, and had paid down his eyes the price of his criminal curiosity, what right had I to exult in his misfortune? I did not exult. I delighted in no man's punishment, though it were even merited. But these personal distinctions identified in an instant an old friend of mine whom I had known